Okay, you want to know what my problem is? I have this real inclination to compare myself to others, and I get jealous easily. I don't know if I would call that, well, no, I'm not going to say it. But basically, I see people who look like they're surrounded by people who care about them and who are supportive of them, and I see them accomplish great things. For instance, maybe there's a high school student who happens to be a captain of a lacrosse team or a soccer team or a volleyball team or something, some athletic thing. They're involved in their newspaper. It just seems like if something were to go down or they were ever to be in trouble, torrents of people would come to flocking to their assistance. And it's just people believe in them, and they have a lot of people who encourage them and nurture them and support them. And so now I'm not going to go ahead and insult my family and say that we're not nurturing and that we're boorish and we're dogs or anything. Not that that's a good word, but I'm just saying I'll get jealous easily. I'll see somebody and I'll form these generalizations or, poorly established assumptions that maybe all is well in this person's life and he or she has tons of support. And so it's like everybody believes in this person. So if stuff really were to go down, you would not stand a chance. They'd be like, what the hell is this creep doing? And this is just a personal theory, but I always felt like people who come from abusive or unsupportive environments are much more highly likely to be incarcerated in prison and stuff. And I think that's because they come from an environment where they are taught not to believe in themselves or not to have faith in themselves and to just give up, and so that's what they seem to be trained to do in some cases. I'm talking about the ones who will not rise above, and the abused persons might end up not even trying, so they're not really very involved in their community, and so they're really not much of losing them would not, prove to be all that detrimental to the community. And maybe they haven't reached out. And so one example is, say there's a successful person, and if anybody messes with that person, tons of people flock to the rescue. I mean, they really do a number on. It's kind of like, if the Super Nintendo game or the N64 game, say Super Nintendo, there's a Super NES game, The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, and there's also N64 game, The Ocarina of Time, where if you attack a chicken enough, you keep hitting one chicken enough, a whole ton are going to come to the rescue and continuously attack Link non-stop. And it's because I think the chickens all have these lines of defense where people are going to come to the rescue or flock to the rescue, no pun intended. Sometimes I have the impression where I don't really get myself out there. So if anybody was to try to harm me or do anything bad to me, not a lot of people are going to help me. And, I've seen people who know how to compliment and be polite and stuff. It just doesn't feel natural to me. I would feel like I'm being creepy. For instance, I could see something on a social networking, website where somebody says, I really like your hair. It matches your eye color, stuff like that. Or your shirt really complements your eye color. I feel like if I was to write something like that, they'd say, what, are you hitting on me, you perverted stalker? it's just I feel like I don't feel comfortable making those statements because, but some other person might make that same exact statement and the person will really appreciate it. Like, be like, oh, you're so sweet. Whereas, you know, honest to God, I would not feel very, honest to Betsy, I wouldn't feel comfortable at all saying that because I feel like, although when the other person said it, you know, I really like your shirt, it matches your eye color, or I like your hair, it matches your dress. Although some people can say it and get commended for their sweetness and their good manners and stuff, I think that people might get creeped out if I were to say something like that. And I think the main reason is because it's hard to describe. It's one of those things you can't put into words. It's like some people just know how to connect and to reach out with people. It's like either you got it or you don't. And if you don't got, or it's like either you got it or you don't got it. And if you don't got it, I'll start over. It's like either you got it or you don't got it. And if you don't got it, knock it off because, quit kidding yourself because you're not fooling anyone. So, that's as my age-old Mark Smith expression goes. Either you got it or you don't got it. And if you don't got it, stop fooling yourself because you're not kidding anyone. Or, I got it backwards. Either you got it or you don't got it. And if you don't got it, stop kidding yourself because you're not fooling anyone. So, like, if I don't got it with the whole empathy thing, and I try to kid myself that I've got it, I'm not fooling anyone. You can cut it out with your false modesty. And sometimes I mean it, but sometimes I'm forcing it. And sometimes I don't even know the difference between when I'm forcing something and when I mean it. But, you know, if you see someone such as maybe a figure skater, or, I mean, I think about girls a lot more than guys. So it's a non-sexual thing, it's just a habit. I'm not some kind of pervert, and I'm not gay. I just think of women more. But anyways, say you were to see some female figure skater, such as maybe in that movie Ice Castles, for instance. And I know, I actually thought the movie was kind of sick, like knocking some girl out and making her blind. I mean, I think that's kind of demented and twisted, but I think the movie had a good message, but I would refrain from writing a movie where I blind a girl because it's just, I thought it was just sick. It was ill. But anyways, there was that scene, and I'm talking about the 1978 version, with a character that could have very easily been my mom, because I know she used to love her roller skating. But there's this scene where they played some Beethoven disco version of that song, and she seemed to be getting a lot of respect, and you could tell that it took an awful lot of practice for her to be doing what she was doing, and she earned a lot of respect from people. And, I mean, if anybody were to try to assault her physically, I think they would probably care a lot more and be a lot more distraught than if somebody were to assault me. Some, you know, freeloading loser bum living with his parents, you know, just about ready to turn 30. What has he ever done? You know, who is this guy? So, in that essence, that turns me bitter. And that gets me feeling kind of yucky because I feel like somebody's got something I don't have. And skating is not my thing. I'm going to admit that. Or for instance, my sister is an actress. She's into actressing. I know a couple people who are into actressing. That's not my thing either, you know. I'm camera shy. I'm very horrible on video. Most of my speeches or dissertations are better when I don't think to bring a camera and I'm just talking to myself. I actually word things a lot more smoothly. But that's not the point. The point is not about that I'm not an actor or that I'm not a figure skater. It's that I never found something that's a hidden talent that not many other people have that I could use to bedazzle and amaze, but that not many other people have. And because of that, it's not like I'm any more useful than any old guy off the street. And so I feel like I just feel useless. And people are always on the edge of wondering the worst about me. Do you think I could be some crazy sexual deviant or something? Do you think that I think very erotic stuff? Or that I deliberately seek out young female actresses to check them out? You know, no, I'm not, but I'm always very, very vigorously and very, I'm always very vigorously and diligently trying to communicate consistently that that's not what I'm about. But wouldn't it be nice if I didn't always have to reassure everybody that I'm not some kind of pervert, but if that they just knew that I wasn't? So that way I didn't have anything to prove. People just knew. Wouldn't that make my life a lot easier? Another thing. I don't really have a group of people who I know I can talk to and know they'll listen to me. So I keep dumping all of my issues on people of whom it's not their job to listen to my personal life struggle stories. I could end up walking into a Asperger's group and just upon walking through the door, instead of asking how the person greeting me is, start, dispensing all of my life struggles to the person. And it's not that person's job. And then to conceal the man's name, I'll just call him the big boss, the one who heads the place and oversees all the events. Sometimes feels a little bit uneasy about me, recycling all of my life's issues onto all of the staff members at that facility. He's thinking about the well-being of the staff, and he doesn't always appreciate how I place the staff members into that difficult position, of having to be therapists to interpret and diagnose and solve my issues. He would prefer that I consulted the work of a professional therapist, which has never happened because it's hard work trying to find a therapist. I've been doing an awful lot of stuff to try to get one. But, so I'm used to people to always having so much to say or so many things to discuss, but people are cutting me off abruptly and dubbing me inconsiderate and rude and nasty because I'm forcing my life issues onto other people. To me, it always felt like I'm always getting in trouble and persecuted for doing the slightest little slip-ups that most people that would make it seem ridiculous. Whereas most people who have greater life accomplishments under their belt and who have better social skills and more people who like them and advocate for them, when they got more people pulling for them, who have done much worse, but they get away with it. And then I barely have to do anything, and I'm in trouble. Like, for instance, if there was this person who was really popular, and for some reason or another I made her feel uncomfortable because I didn't even realize. The next thing you know, I'm in deep trouble. Big, big trouble, way over my head. Because the other person felt uncomfortable about me, but she had a much greater network of support and plenty more people polling for her, saying, who's this creep? And one of my pet peeves is having somebody walk up to somebody I'm trying to interact with and ask, is this man bothering you? And then to have the girl go, well, he's a little bit. But she never told me. And I think of an analogy of comparing it almost to like the oil spill where they, in the Gulf Coast, where they show wildlife and it's afflicted by the oil spill. But you think that's bad, but it's like, yeah, but how tiny of a fraction of the extent of damage are you witnessing in the video? How many more square miles do you think they're not filming? And so it's like, are they really, how much percentage of the endangered animals are they saving, or how much percent of a single percent? So when you think of that, the time when somebody walks up to somebody I'm speaking with and asks her, is this man bothering you? I think the only thing different about this time is that I could think maybe this particular incident is bad. No, maybe the only thing about this incident is that it's going reported. Think of how many other times nobody ever speaks up, but they feel uncomfortable about me. And that's kind of creepy because that means at any juncture in time at all, somebody could feel like calling for help. And I never liked feeling like the person the threat that needs to be protected against, or the threat that needs to be fended off. So if somebody asks, is this man bothering you, referring to me, it makes it feel like the person needs protecting from me. I never liked the feeling of people having an impression that somebody needs protection against me. Because I always like to feel convinced that I'm harmless, that I'm wimpy and stuff. But then people could come back and hit me with the old, age-old come back to that and say anybody's capable of getting violent or getting dangerous. It doesn't matter, Steve Urkel, if you got him mad enough. It makes me feel bad because it's almost implying bull crap. We don't trust you, we don't know you, we don't blah, blah, blah. I don't like it when I see people who are highly integrated into the community and they got so many people polling for them. It's like, when in doubt, everybody's going to believe them. And when my dad tells me, well, they earned it. Yes, you have to work at that. He's like how he's accusing me of not working for it. Like, it's accusing me of laziness and stuff. And I'm going to end this video here. But in the next video, I'm going to mention another pet peeve of mine. So, here we go. You want to know one pet peeve I have? This relates to my being autistic with Asperger's syndrome. I never liked it when people say, you know, yeah, right, Asperger's, Schmasperger's. I got a couple children of my own who have Asperger's syndrome, and they know how to say please and thank you and look people in the eye when they talk to them. And they know about empathy, and they've got tons of friends and stuff. And they had to work really hard at it, but they were able to learn. Why is this a pet peeve of mine? Well, because the fact that I got a disability is the only thing I have going for me. I mean, I got no other possible excuse as to why my eye contact is still a work in progress, why I seem to struggle with empathy and, you know, not being so wrapped up in myself that I lose track of keeping an eye open for people around me, such as maybe accidentally cutting them off in a grocery store aisle without even realizing it, or without even once thinking to look up at them and go, oh, I'm sorry, here, you go first. Stuff like that, you know. I like to believe Asperger's syndrome imparts upon the autistic person some sort of a aspect that causes them to think less of awareness of other people. But it's when people come out and go bull crap. My 8-year-old daughter who has Asperger's and pretty badly knows how to say please and thank you and knows how to cut her food up right when she eats and knows how to, you know, let people go first rather than blindly cutting people off. She knows how to think about others. She's got a lot of friends. That's a lot of baloney that, you know, I think that this stems deeper than your Asperger's syndrome. I think something's going on in your home. I hate to say it, but I think your family might be in need of counseling. And this complicates things, because when I developed this inferiority complex, where I go, maybe it was my parents, just try to even begin to imagine how insulting that feels for my parents. You know, I mean, nobody's going to ever walk up to their father, and what kind of a person's going to say, you know, Dad, do you think you might not have been quite as good of a father as you could have been? I mean, who's going to do that? That's like crazy, right? Or, hey, Mom, do you think maybe you might have been sort of a bad parent? Or, hey, Mom and Dad, do you think maybe if you loved me more, I could have ended up better? I mean, who's going to say that to their own parents? That's insane, right? That's highly disrespectful. But sometimes in the world, or sometimes in life, we are going to think things. All right, I'll start over because I want to state this very smoothly. Sometimes in life, we're going to think things that we're never going to want to say. Sometimes in life, we're going to think a truth. Or sometimes in life, we're going to make these generalizations. And we're going to wonder or contemplate over whether these assumptions are correct. But even hinting that that's what you're thinking is going to cause a lot of friction, and it's probably going to destroy your relationship with your family. And that's where I get stuck, because I develop these inferiority complexes where I have doubts about the etiquette and the level of maturity in my household. And I start really doubting, you know, whether my parents were as polite as they could have been. But that offends, and that cuts deeply. I mean, try to imagine if you're the father of a son who talks like that, or even thinks like that. And so I think there's got to be a solution. I mean, some way I can settle this without, but it's kind of weird. It's almost like suppose you think that a woman is not very attractive, but you don't want to tell her that. I mean, think of the Jim Carrey movie Liar, Liar. That girl's hairdo, for instance, at the front desk. I'll call her an administrator, just to be politically correct. I don't want to call her a receptionist. And she had a very strange haircut. I mean, her hairstyle was weird, but nobody wanted to say that to her. They wanted to say, like, that's a very interesting haircut. But they really thought that it sucked. But they don't want to say it. But unfortunately, eventually, the inevitable truth is truthful opinions of a person are going to slip out. And that's what happens sometimes. So if you think something, even if it's taboo to think that, you're thinking it. And you're not always going to hide it. That's hence always the entrance of that joke. Well, I mean, I didn't mean it's just stalking you. Well, I mean, I was checking up on you. Like, yeah, I just, the abuse. I mean, the misunderstood miscommunications. Yeah, that's it. No, you said something before. So I'm always a victim of that. Like, there's this scene in Anger Management, a 2003 movie starring Adam Sandler and co-starring Jack Nicholson. And there's this scene where David Busnik, Adam Sandler's character, his boss, Mr. Head, says, "You're late." And he's like, "Well, actually, this is the traffic. I don't need any traffic reports. You're always late." Well, it was the first time I remember being late, but okay. And then Jack Nicholson comes in and says, may I interject? You were about to say something else before. We mustn't absorb and repress. And I was thinking in my head, well, yeah, but I can't because he's my boss. So that's proving I was going to say something before. I'm saying if I was in that position, I'd be like, well, yeah, in my words, you were about to say something before, weren't you? Well, yeah, but I can't because he's my boss, and I'd get fired if I did. But I still think this. So sometimes there's this age-old scenario where if you apply the strict and rigid disciplinary authoritarian, if you apply the strict and rigid authoritarian rule too much, a person might, disobey the rules the first second that they got. A person's going to disobey the rules the first chance that they got. I mean, because they don't really truly understand. It's kind of like you can't force somebody to understand something before they truly understand. Like, you could try to make me understand the big picture with what makes my mom frustrated with me. I could say, oh yeah, I get it. Just with hopes that if I can prove that I understand the situation and the extent of it, people might like me more. But I don't really understand it yet. And this reminds me of a bad habit I used to have as a teenager and a young adult, both in high school and college, where whenever being tutored, if a certain concept did not click with me for long enough, eventually when asked, do you get it? Or if I were to understand the content, I'd say, oh yeah, I get it. But then in a future tutoring session later on, particularly in math, I would not be understanding something that would be of this most simplest, easiest difficulty. in the next set of material. And the tutor would be completely blunt with me. Mark, I don't get how you couldn't understand this. This is some of the easiest stuff. The only way that you could not be understanding this problem here is if you didn't get a full grasp on the older stuff. I thought you told me that you understood it. Well, I mean, I just wasn't getting it. Well, then why did you say you understood it? Well, I mean, I just didn't see that I was ever going to get it, so I just wanted to say I understood. So, you can't rush nature, as the old adage goes. So, if you can't rush nature, you also can't rush understanding. If you don't get something, you don't get it. So, if somebody tells you, that you were being rude and inconsiderate, say I was to walk into one of the functions at the Asperger's place and start talking about everything going on under my roof, in my household. Well, meanwhile, the man's trying to choreograph all kinds of people coming in and cater to every, in excess of 30 people. I'm going to get kicked out if I start talking and blabbing on about something that's an issue for me. Not only that, but I was being rude in ways that I never even crossed my mind. And so I do these things that show a lack of concern for other people. And that's where the question emerges. That, is it the Asperger's syndrome doing it? Or could it be also a mixture of being taught this from my folks? Which is, for instance, turning right, making a right-hand turn into a street, sort of narrowly avoiding a car that you kind of cut off when you made that right-hand turn, and not making any indication to the man behind you that you're in any way remorseful for doing that. Or you're in a grocery store, and you kind of narrowly miss somebody because you cut them off, because you were only absorbed in your own self-thought. But you don't even, apologize or even turn around or even look at them. And stuff like that I'm talking about. Maybe after a while, maybe I've been, surrounded by that so much. And then I turn around and say, oh, I have Asperger's syndrome. That made me do it. And so I wonder, it's very hurtful. It puts me to tears when I realize, when I even toy with the notion that that's what the case is with me, because I don't want to admit it. Who wants to admit that that's how they are? Even if it's possible to change, even to hint that I'm anything like that makes me a lot worse, a lot more socially inferior to my peers. And I don't want that. If somebody else has something, I want it too. So it's because I want people to like me more. I want people to not hate me and stuff. And I want to do whatever it takes to have other people. I want to be more favorable. I want to be more desirable. I want people to like me more. So, but note that I'm never going to be an actor, and I'm never going to be into figure skating. I want to win people over doing what I like. For instance, I'm never going to be putting on an acting production, but maybe, if I could brag and boast about a radio station I set up and encourage friends to listen. It's just, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Sometimes when I see people connecting, and they truly connect, and sparks ignite. I'm talking not necessarily about a couple or something. I'm saying friends. And one thing leads to another, They go, hey, can I get your phone number? Hey, maybe we should go out sometime. The next thing you know, they're running a business partnership. And I feel like I'm in doubt that that's probably never going to happen with me. And something about me makes people angered by me even more than a wannabe thug. I mean, even a small-time wannabe criminal or a small-time wannabe thug probably gets a little more respect than I do, because the small-time wannabe thug has certain aspects about them, maybe ways that people can sympathize, such as, I'm not certain how to spell it, but there is this movie, Tsotsi, that was set in Africa somewhere, and this guy kidnapped a baby during a robbery, an infant rather, and when he returned the baby back to the mom, he learned that he had caused her to be paralyzed, like be paraplegic in the whole robbery and all that. But the fact that that story was is that that story had a development that showed an essence of character in the thug. Even though he was a criminal, somehow people could sympathize with him a little bit. And so with me, I'm always being a suck-up and a kiss-ass. And for some reason, even though I wouldn't harm a fly in anybody's, or a hair on anybody's face, there's something about me that makes people a little more hostile towards me than even they would ever be towards criminals in some cases. A lack of character, I don't know, and I resent that. Like, I get, like, what is it about me that I don't have? What makes me so bad? And I almost get this impression that I'm doing something that's wicked bad. I mean, wicked bad. It's wicked horrible. But I have no idea what it could be. And whatever it is that I'm doing is making people hate me a lot. I know there was this Ninja Turtles episode where there was this guy, and he seemed to be totally, like, all he could ever do was think up kiss-ass comments about his dad, and my dad would be so proud of me, and he had some nasally, whiny voice. He just seemed like he was entirely shielded from the world, and he was very clumsy and accident-prone, and people felt pitiful about him. It's, I don't know, like, no way this man's going to get it. He's just not going to get it. He's just pitiful. I mean, like the Stan character, for instance, from the Space Jam movie. You get the jitters thinking of him. You're like, my God, I'm sure just to get away from that Stan character. Oh, yeah, I know. Good God, he's pathetic. And I'm thinking, like, yeah, is that like me? And I don't know, but see, I'm aware of this. But, yeah, I don't want to be pathetic. It's like a never-ending cycle. I don't want to be thought of as pathetic, so I toughen up my shell a little bit. But then, when I toughen up my shell, I fear that people will think I got no empathy. So then I try to soften back up again. But when I do that, I overdo it. I can't seem to find moderation in anything. I'm very literal. It's like either I'm sending people numerous, countless numbers of emails every day, or I get a stern demand to please knock it off and cool it with the emailing. But then 3 weeks later, they email me back and say, hey, yo, are you still alive? Mark, I didn't mean stop emailing me completely. I just meant try to do it in moderation more. So I took it to the literal extreme and just continued ever messaging them. So that's what I'm like. I'm very literal. More to come in the next video. So now, I mean, how much of being self-absorbed and never thinking of things going on around you or other people is really the doing of the Asperger's syndrome, and how much of it is the person's own doing? The answer may surprise you, although the more that is left into the hands of the individual and not, in fact, in the hands of Asperger's, the more miserable I would feel, because then that meant that that was the way I was raised. But there's a little problem with this assertion. By talking this way, I am being openly disrespectful to my parents, and I might also be entirely overlooking, as if I got stricken by some form of amnesia, or as if I've been robbed of my memory. In the meantime, also forget all of the positive, helpful things that my parents have done for me. And, for instance, bringing me to all of these diagnoses when I was a kid, and all of the special ed they got me, but also whilst allowing me a decent amount of mainstream as well. People forget. When they get lost in the moments of passion and compassion, passion and obsession and OCD, and they get lost in the whole bitterness or resent or jealousy, they forget about the little things. But the only problem is that those little things are probably important, and you're skipping them. Stress causes people to lose information out of their memory. So when I start questioning my parents, I forget. It's like I get stricken by amnesia and forget about all the helpful things they've ever done for me, such as pay for my college education. But then you think about it, it's like that Paula Abdul song, The Way That You Love Me. It ain't the trips to Brazil, it ain't the Hollywood game, it ain't your 90-foot yacht or something. Maybe there's a difference between true, genuine love and just people buying things. Or maybe there's a difference between the saying is maybe there's a difference between true, genuine love and just people like showing, well, I brought you through college and I paid your way to this university, but here's what really gets me. It's when mom goes, why don't you go over there? People could recommend that maybe I'm getting a little bit overly paranoid and not giving her enough slack, that maybe my mom, to a point where I failed to consider that maybe my mom wants some free time to herself. But I just expected the worst from her. But I still don't like it when, say, mom goes, hey, Mark, why don't you go over there? Almost to dismiss me, so like, all that she really cares about is that I can be out of the picture. But in talking about this, even when I make amends, I'm going to be 30 soon. And here I am, yet still talking about my parents. Well, I'm going to be 30 years old soon. I mean, in another month, so I'm going to turn 30 soon. Yet here I am, still analyzing how good of parents I have, or how many issues I have with my parents. Why should someone still care at age 30? I have had people tell me that I'm never going to get a job where my social skills are now. They said, like, because at certain places I go to get services, I'm like, I notice I'm being yelled at for things that nobody ever tells me. How do I put this? I'm getting yelled at for things that nobody ever even says anything about. anywhere else. I mean, this is the only place where people don't let me get away with those certain things. Big boss says, do you want to get away with those things? Well, I go, well, yeah, I guess. I mean, it's just so oppressive when I can't, because it becomes such a habit of me. And so that's what happened. I said, I'm getting yelled at for all these little things that nobody will ever say anything to me about anywhere else I am. I mean, I can't get away with like anything that I could get away with anywhere else. With that, Big Boss turns to me and says, well, do you want to get away with that stuff? I said, well, yeah, I guess. I mean, it just feels so oppressive when I can. I never realized that these have become so much, behaviors have become so much habits of me. And he said, well, so you don't want to change? I felt like he was assessing me for like where if I were to ever stand trial for something where I get into an awkward situation and I didn't realize how much trouble I got in, that the big boss on that place would say, well, I remember once him agreeing or confirming that he didn't want to change. So he must be aware of what he's doing. I felt very bad because I felt like I said something to somebody, and I wanted to tell somebody some trusted friend that I truly knew. I was thinking maybe I was being a little disrespectful of someone, and so I was contemplating an apology. Right away, that person cuts me off, doesn't even want to hear. Just says, you provided the name of this individual, and right out in public where people can hear. I don't appreciate that. You're not respecting this person's privacy. That's very inconsiderate and very impolite what you just did. And I said, yeah, but I was just formulating a way to apologize for her for something I might have said, but I don't want to hear about your rude behavior or whatever. I'm busy. I have all this stuff I have to do. You're, in fact, being rude once more by interrupting me when I'm doing this. So in other words, it's like no matter what I do, I know I'm going to be taken aside and pulled into an office. Then I went into the office and went to grab a seat, and I didn't realize there was a bag in that seat I was going to sit in. The person's like, oh, wait. And I realized there's this bag, for all I knew, could have been expensive equipment, like a laptop in it. I'm like, oh. And the person's like, oh, yeah. And I'm thinking, so I screwed up about being rude by talking to him when he didn't want me to talk. But then I also screwed up once more by failing to acknowledge, to even be aware that there was some expensive equipment. And it was like, well, because you weren't watching what you were doing. You just act out of impulse. You're very compulsive. And so I talk, and I'm like, well, if I'm not sitting in, then if it's at all possible, I could just get my money refunded and excuse myself. But then later, I'm back out in the lobby, and I'm thinking, I'm sacrificing a lot of my time and some of my money to be here. The person says, your money or your dad's money? And I'm thinking, oh, I lost again. But as I was saying some of that stuff about I sacrificed a lot of my money and time to be there, because I was so frustrated, I saw that the person there was crying. I thought, oh, great. Shoot, that's just what I need. So I get home, and somebody says, a friend of mine says, stop emailing me. Cool it with the emails. Not in those direct words verbatim, but I'm like, great. That tops it all off. So I'm in a position where if I talk about my problems, nobody gives a crap. Nobody gives a flying damn, but there are certain people in the world where if they were to talk of even much more insequential problems or more insignificant, people would be listening to them. And I feel like the more I force this unwanted attention from people, the more angry I get. So whereas where I feel like I am persevering to get myself the attention and support and the loving care I need, I'm actually, in fact, digging my grave even deeper. Because the harder I try, as a matter of fact, the more bad karma I work up for myself. It's almost like when a villain says, mark my words, I will get my revenge. By every increasing episode, and each and every passing day, that villain builds up more and more significant and strong, higher degrees of resistance from people. So it's like if you go against the grain, your additional aggressiveness and determination is not going to help you. As a matter of fact, it's going to do quite the opposite. It's going to be digging your grave even deeper. But why do people do it? Because in their minds, they're persevering for something they really want. And they feel that if they try hard enough, they'll get it. That they'll get what they want, but they have to really push at it. But what they don't realize is that they're pushing somebody into the flames that they might not even know. And then people would be, there'd be the emerging question of, do you think they really didn't know, or do you think it would be to their own personal convenience if they didn't know? So that's what happens. I could think of friends of mine who have accomplished a lot in their time. They've got excellent hobbies. They really had to work hard to develop their talents and things. People respect them. I mean, you could almost think of them as a motivational speaker. I live for the, philosophical, perseverance-driven people who always turn everything into an inspirational story. Like, I'm corny like that. He really tried hard. He has no tolerance to teasing whatsoever. Teasing is never a joke. But, I'm very woody. I'm very serious. No, not that kind of woody. Not what you're thinking. I mean, woody isn't like I'm kind of serious. I get serious. I'm thinking, I don't cheat on people. I don't hit women. Blah blah blah. I like to be very almost like I love the stories of the aspiring greats of the history, where everybody says that they couldn't do it and nobody believed in them, but they proved everybody wrong, and they showed what a great talent they had, and people learned how to love them. That's what I'm like. I love to win people over. Have people like me more, and doing whatever it takes to get more people to be my friend. That's what I'm like. It's almost like watching an episode of World's Wildest Police Chase videos where the announcer said he had the will but not the skill. This guy wanted to get away, but he couldn't because his driving skills were not at the level necessary to elude police. I got the will to be a social butterfly, but not the skill. And it's convenient to say maybe the Asperger's syndrome did it, because that dismisses the more complex outer influences, including family dynamics and what type of an influence your parents are. But I mean, who the hell is going to walk up to their parents and ask them if they feel they were bad parents? I mean, you don't do that, particularly if they paid your way through college and they're paying for you to live under their roof rent free. So that places me in a situation, but it's like sometimes I get angry about my mom because I have my own personal self-doubts about my mom. Self-doubts that maybe she's kind of bitter or resentful. And so she whines and complains about things that other people surrounding her are doing wrong, as opposed to, like, she dishes out a lot of negative energy. And I wonder if she's kind of miserable with herself and with her life. But as I'm saying this, I become completely blinded to exactly how offensive I'm sounding as I say this. It's like I'm oblivious. I'll say all this stuff, and it's almost like I'm desensitized against even beginning to realize how disturbing I sound when I place these accusations. So like it's nothing. I'll say, like, I wonder if Mom's bitter with her own self and she dispenses a lot of negative energies as opposed to positive and encouraging and judgment-free. Like trying to encourage us to inspire greatness or encourage us to get involved with the school or the community. She's instead, going, nobody does the dishes around here. Negative energy. And that is how I feel inferior, because I imagine people from other family units who maybe felt more encouraged and were taught or trained how to be more, not let things bother you and not let the little things get to you. And I sometimes wonder, I haven't the slightest clue really, honestly, to be truly frank with you, about, I haven't the very slightest or vaguest idea of whether our family is more dysfunctional than most, whether we've got some serious issues here. And it sucks not knowing. And it's like, I could go, well, okay, I'll take your word for it, guys. Yeah, you're right, nothing's wrong. I believe you. But it's like when telling the tutor back in high school and college, oh yeah, I get it. I understand. When I don't really. You can't really get something if you don't get it. You can't force yourself to get something if you don't understand it. If you don't understand it, you don't understand it. And if you don't get it yet, you can't just go, oh, okay, I get it now. Because if you don't really get it, you'll turn around and be arguing the next, 5 seconds later, because you just said that you got it to please the person, but you didn't really get it. So that's where I stand. This is what causes all my emotional turmoil. And I always dump all this information onto people who do not volunteer to hear about it, because I feel like it's the last resort. It's an act of desperation.